So Paul, do you want to take it from here, or would you like for me to lead off with Kyle? Or
yeah, let me just give a little introduction first, because
sure.
I think it's important for us to put this in proper perspective, because really what these interviews have been about and what they are about is providing objective, clear information to our community so they can make really informed decisions about this upcoming 2020 election. And certainly we've had quite a few candidates come and go through this interview process. They've been very candid and very open. And we've had a few of the well-established candidates who are incumbent and who've been in this whole system for quite some time are not wanting to participate. And that is the case right now with Kyle. And what we're going to be doing is really going over specific facts. We're going to just keep it to the reality of his voting record and also his funding sources, and discuss that, and also discuss the system that he is functioning in right now and part of that system, and how it affects then our community. And we were looking at a lot of those impacts that Simon was talking about when we talk about water, education, a lot of the resources that we have and how they are utilized and how they are not supporting the people as well as they possibly could. So this is a good opportunity for us to really get to know all the nitty-gritty of the candidates. And again, this is about disclosing information, being candid and clear so we can make informed decisions. So with that little intro, Sean, if you want to start off, and then Bruce, and talk specifically then about, if you want to maybe introduce the mechanism that we have as part of this whole Democratic Party system here in the state. And then from there, we can look at how Kyle fits in with that. Sean?
Sure. Well, I am a member of the Democratic Party. I believe in the system. I work on it both at the local and state level. The challenge is there's more than one Democratic Party here, because this is the most democratic state in the union, which, even though we have our challenges, I'd far rather be here than most other places, because we're struggling with different issues. We're not struggling with blatant, outright obfuscation of the ability for us to vote or whatever. It's a different level, which I'm very grateful for. One thing, living on an island, we'll run into people that we go against at a particular time, or we back someone else. 10 years later, we'll be working with them on a different level. So that's something that I really enjoy about being here on the island. With that said, we're in an extraordinary time right now. Maui has basically 3 days worth of food if the barges stop. We have 2 weeks worth of fuel for our cars, 90 days for our generation systems. So what has worked in the past, where everything flows from Oahu, and is Oahu centric, no longer is the story. COVID has taught us that. As climate change begins to take profound changes here on the island, we need a different level of people that are willing, that have the capacity to walk beyond the standard way that has worked in the state to a certain level for a long period of time. That's the reason we're here, to give you a chance to listen to other possibilities. Now, Kyle Yamashita has been working for quite some time, and he's been successful with his runs for state legislature. But when we take a look at some of the votes that he's had, as well as where some of his funding is coming from, we have to kind of question a few things. I'm going to start off with some of his finances based on his last election cycle. And this is straight out of the Capitol website. He was able to get $6,500 of out-of-state funds. Who is it that's coming in right now and offering him $6,500? He was able to get a total of $90,000 of total contributions for a seat that most people run this type of seat on $10,000 to $15,000 on the outside islands. So where do these funds come from? when we start digging in further into his records, we see that he got $7,398 from lawyers and lobbyists. He has a lot of anonymized contributions. We start to kind of question, who is it that's really backing Kyle? When we take a look at some of his votes, we also question, who is it that he's voting for? We need representation for Maui, not for Oahu. And what is it that Kyle's been doing? There's a House Bill 2607 that would have criminalized and penalized homelessness. Well, how far am I from being homeless? I'm doing fine today. If I end up getting sick, if something else happens, if I lose my home, whatever it may be, I could be homeless. And so could majority of the people here. So in that morass, to have someone who's willing to vote to make homelessness a criminalization, to me, that's not someone that I can back personally. And I have a real challenge with that. House Bill 1725 would have made it a felony to impede public transit. At one time, we stopped the super ferry. Through a lot of different challenges, we were able to do that. It seems like Mr. Yamashita wanted to make that criminalization, so we can't stand up and actually take care of our islands. As they were stealing truckloads full of our stones and other things going on, he would have made a criminalization. We would have been locked up in jail for doing it. He got over $17,000 in campaign donations in 2014 from chemical companies. So we have a question of the pro-GMO. This is another very important issue, which it's just a question of how much is he actually looking out for what we're doing here locally versus what other institutions and the people that are putting funds in his pocket, especially corporate funds, are paying for. And with that, I think I'll pass it over to Bruce. Oh, excuse me, Daniel. You want to take it next? Whichever one. Go for it.
I'll take it.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Go ahead, Bruce.
We have a systemic situation here in Hawaii, in that we're a one-party state. The Democratic Party rules, and that's a fundamental problem because there is no check and balance. And in that system, we have unelected officials basically making the decisions for how the people in the Democratic Party vote. So there's a big push within the Democratic Party, which you're a part of, to vote the party line, to vote what you're told to vote. And if you do that, you get all the benefits of good funding and security and being able to have committee heads if you follow that party line. So that's when we look at the how people vote and look at each individual, how they're voting. We get a feel for, are they voting the party line, what the bosses would want to see? Our unelected officials who are running things from behind the scene, or are they voting for the people in the INA and the people who represent their district? We saw that big piece of how much funding he took from Kraft Foods, from the Monsanto directly, from the Grocery Manufacturers Association, all pro-GMO lobbies, and how much funding he took from that during that time period in 2014. And he in his campaign, he came within something like 500 votes of losing to Terry Lawrence, who ran a campaign of working for the people, not the corporations. So this is very much, especially in upcountry Maui, on the top of people's lists. So it's a fundamental problem when you have a one-party state, particularly when there is no check and balances between the party dominating the show. And with that, I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Aloha. So to kind of tack on to what you guys were saying, I hear ya when we're looking at this a party situation. Now, anyone who starts to take a look at the way politics are run, obviously, intelligence ought to be the governing factor in all this. And we have heard that that county governance has taken more of a toll for without party, but it's like drawing lines in the sand. One of the things that I continue to see with some of these candidates, some of these incumbents that have not decided not to come and talk with us, like this bill here that keeps coming up, SB 2609, controversial ethics bill that would have revoked the requirement for board of commission members to have to file financial statements. In other words, this bill would open the doors for people on these boards to receive financial gifts from lobbyists. Yamashita voted yes a number of times. As well as a bill that would have allowed, HB 2191, would have allowed DLNR to extend commercial leases on public lands. Lots of opposition and leadership waived at 48-hour rule to hear it in Finn with only an hour's notice. Now, we've heard from multiple candidates now that, well, there's a situation in the state where transparency seems to be getting slashed. Like, how do you get a 5-pound bill that you'd now have to vote on Monday? Is it even possible that these people are just voting along the party line, as Bruce had mentioned? And this is the importance of everyone really having eyes on in the government, so that we can understand what's really happening and not be taken advantage of. So, Kyle Yamashita, if you would like to come and have a conversation, I'd love to see what you got going on with these votes that you have. Why? So that's what I have to say. Mahalo.
Thank you, Daniel. Again, we have put out invitations to all of the candidates. For Kyle, for example, I had sent out 3 emails, and I gave him also 3 voicemails, and I have not heard at all from him. And yes, he is invited if you would like to be part of this interview process, that we were willing to have a special interview process at some point in time where it suits his schedule. But again, we will ask these questions because I think these questions are so important in terms of how he's voted. It's really important to note that Simon Russell came into this whole candidate cycle because of HB 1326. And Kyle voted yes for that. That means to have a holdover on water permits and also to extend repeals by 7 years. So it would perpetuate the issues of water access and water distribution for quite some time. And Kyle voted for that on February of 2019 and February 2020. So again, this is a very important issue. Another issue around water was HB 2677. And it was a highly controversial water bill right issue, and where, again, Kyle voted yes in 2020 in February, but it died before he could vote on it again. But the point is that he is supporting these types of issues where it takes really, especially the issues of water and water control, the lifeblood of the island, to go against the Hawaiian Constitution and provide then this mechanism so that, again, the water rights can be taken away like it has been for A and B for all these years and all the other plantations. So that's, I think, to me, really important issues. And because the water really determines not only our developments, but also the crops, what type of crops we have, where the crops we could grow. And for example, and so it has a huge impact on our farming and potential farming that we could have here on the island. And another thing that he did was he voted for HB 593, which allowed then solar farms on prime agricultural land. So he voted yes for that again in twice in February of 2020 and in March also of 2020. So again, we need to access our prime agricultural lands and not have them used for other issues, which Kyle then voted for. So with that, I will give it over to the next person. Bruce, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
What's also interesting, where does the money come from, for supporting a campaign? Because that says a lot. And from the reports of followthemoney.org, it showed that 98.9% of the support came from outside of his district. There's only had one $200 donation originating from inside of District 12. So with that, is he supporting the people of District 12, or is he supporting other things? The people in his own district aren't really the ones who are supporting him. That's a red flag for me. Another to look at is the quantity coming from various lobbies. For instance, he had $7,400 coming from lawyers and lobbyists. Another $9,000 from finance, insurance, and real estate. $9,000 from labor-related things, and $6,000 from construction. So these are heavily lobbied, highly interested lobbies that where the money is coming from. So these are just kind of the general flags of what is the character, where does the money come from? And I'll pass it on.
If I could put onto that too, part of that is bundlers that happen from Honolulu. So if Kyle was known quite well for basically following around the powers that be in the legislature and working with them, and if he did their bidding, they would bundle with him. So a lot of these are bundled numbers. If a certain infrastructure, say lawyers or attorneys decide to spend $900,000 as a system on this particular election cycle, and he signed on to specific ways of working, he can get a portion of that. So this is part of the network that we're struggling against a good portion of the time. The other thing too is, he is a small businessman, but yet he's stayed in business. He stayed in the Capitol. We're dealing with people that spend decades in power, instead of giving it over and allowing people that may have new ideas in, because they're too busy. It helps them with their power and their corporate structure, versus new and innovative ideas that can honestly help us in our needs in our districts. So sorry to butt in on that. I just wanted to add those 2 cents for it.
Great, thank you. Is there any other comments that we want to make about Kyle? I think again, we're going to be posting his record as well as this interview process on our website, so you'll be able to get the specifics. There'll be links also with that, so that you can find out the specific bills that they voted for and get a sense of the impact of these decisions on our community as a whole. And I think it's important for us to reflect on that, because again, do we want to put our vote towards someone who may not be supporting the people in the INA, but big money interests, the Democratic corporate machine, the decisions of people who are party bosses who want certain decisions made. So again, do we want to fall into that system, or do we want to go into a new approach? And I think Simon certainly articulated that to us. So with
I just have
I'd also
one
like to
last
put
thing
out-
to say.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Daniel?
Is that truth and righteousness can stand the test of any inquiry. So to all these candidates, if you have the opportunity to speak to your people, then please take it. right? The life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. So fear not. Just come have a conversation with your brothers and your sisters. Okay, we love you. All right.
All right. And my final point is, corporations don't know Democrat, Republican, or Independent. They know what it is that they want to do as a corporations. Some corporations are more benevolent, and some are more malevolent, and some simply are there to make money however they can. So in order to take a certain amount of that power away from the corporate structure and give it back to the people is the basic point of the Porno Network. It has been with citizens-based organizations like this on Maui for almost 2 decades. We've been trying for a long period of time, and we will continue to ceaselessly work to ensure that you have a voice in that structure, and more of a voice as time goes on. So we do thank you for tuning in and being a part. You are a part of this network. Anytime you want to, you can give Facebook questions, and we're more than happy to ask them of the people as they come forward. And thank you for being part of this participatory democracy. Okay, aloha.
Bruce, do you have any other final thing you'd like to say?
I think it's been said.